For 30 years, I gave my daughter everything. My time, my money, and my whole heart. Last week, she looked me dead in the eye and gave me an ultimatum. Pay her $2,000 a month in rent, or get out of the very house I bought for her. What she didn't realize was that I had one last thing to give her, a lesson in consequences, delivered by a moving truck, and an $840 $1,000 sold sign. The air in the living room was thick enough to taste. I felt it the moment I walked through the door, the same door I had installed myself 5 years ago. I was carrying 2 bags of groceries, a small habit of mine, a way to make sure my daughter Chloe and her husband Mike were eating well. They were sitting on the couch, not watching TV, not scrolling on their phones. They were just sitting there waiting for me. It felt less like a welcome and more like an ambush. I brought some steaks, I said, trying to break the silence. I gestured with the grocery bags. They were on sale. Chloe didn't even look at the bags. She just stared at me, her expression unreadable. Mike, on the other hand, couldn't meet my eyes. He just fidgeted with a loose thread on the sofa cushion. The same sofa I had paid for as a housewarming gift. "Dad, we need to talk," Chloe said. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. I set the groceries down on the kitchen counter, a familiar sense of unease creeping up my spine. I had felt it more and more over the past year. The unanswered phone calls, the subtle hints about money, the way they looked at me like I was an obligation instead of a father. "Okay," I said slowly, turning to face them. "What's on your mind?" Mike cleared his throat. "Well, John, it's about expenses. You know, the cost of living has gone up quite a bit. Inflation and all that." I stared at him. He called me John, not Dad. He only did that when he was trying to create distance to turn a family matter into a business transaction. I focused on my daughter, Chloe. "What is this about?" She took a deep breath, and the mask of indifference hardened into something cold. "Dad, you're here a lot. You eat with us, you use the utilities, you treat this place like it's your second home." I almost laughed. A bitter, painful sound. "A second home, Chloe. I bought this house for you. I drained my retirement account to make the down payment so you could start your life without a crushing mortgage. I thought it was our family home." "That was a gift," she said sharply, her voice rising. "A gift is a gift. The deed is in my name, Mike's name. Legally, this is our property." The word legally struck me like a physical blow. She was right. I had trusted her. I had put the house in her name to make things simpler, to give her the security I never had. I never imagined that security would be used as a weapon against me. And for 5 years, I have never asked for a thing. I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I paid for your wedding. I co-signed on your car. I show up with groceries every week because I know Mike's freelance work isn't paying the bills. And now you're talking to me about the electric bill." "It's not just the electric bill," she snapped, finally standing up. Her face was flushed with a strange mix of anger and entitlement. "It's about responsibility. We're adults. We can't be expected to support you." Support me, the words were so absurd, so profoundly unjust, that I felt a sudden chilling calm wash over me. The hurt was still there, a hot coal in my chest, but it was being encased in ice. "Chloe, when have you ever supported me? When have you ever done anything but take?" Mike finally found his voice, a weak, reedy echo of his wife's greed. "We just think it's fair that you contribute. If you're going to be here this often, you should help with the rent." I looked from his shifty eyes to my daughter's defiant glare. The pieces clicked into place. The rehearsed speech, the talk of expenses, the legal terms. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment idea. They had planned this. They had sat in my house on my sofa and calculated my worth down to a monthly fee. Rent, I repeated the word. It felt foreign in my mouth. You want me to pay rent on the house I gave you? Yes, Chloe said, her chin jutting out. $2,000 a month. That's what a room this size goes for in this neighborhood. It's a fair price. The ice in my chest spread, freezing the last of my fatherly affection. I saw her then not as the little girl I had raised, but as a stranger, a tenant, and a very ungrateful one at that. I said nothing. I looked around the room at the photos on the wall of her graduation, her wedding. All moments I had paid for, cherished and supported. They were just pictures now, relics of a past that no longer existed. My silence seemed to unnerve her. Well, she demanded, what's it going to be? You're not just going to live here for free anymore. The free ride is over. Then she said the words, the 10 words that ended everything. It's simple, Dad. Pay rent or get out. I stared at her for a long moment. I saw no regret in her eyes, no love, only a cold, hard demand. And in that moment, she stopped being my daughter. She was just a person who had made a very, very bad business decision. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I simply nodded once, a short, sharp movement of my head. I left the groceries on the counter. I didn't want them to have the steaks. I turned my back on them and walked to the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it softly behind me, the quiet click echoing the final silent severing of a family bond. The free ride was over. But not for me. For them. I don't remember the drive. I must have stopped somewhere because I found myself parked in the nearly empty lot of a closed-down department store, the engine silent. The streetlights cast long, lonely shadows across the cracked asphalt. For a long time, I just sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The echo of my own daughter's words, pay rent or get out, played over and over in my mind. It wasn't a loop of sadness. The initial shock, the deep, gutting pain of betrayal, was already beginning to cool and harden into something else. Something solid and heavy. It was resolve. I looked at my own reflection in the dark rearview mirror. I didn't see the face of a victim. I saw the face of a man who had spent his entire life building things, providing, sacrificing. I saw a man who had been pushed past his limit. There was no agonizing debate in my head. There was no weighing of pros and cons. It was suddenly terribly simple. She had reduced our relationship to a transaction. She had named her price. She had drawn a line in the sand with legal papers and property deeds. Very well. I would respond in the only language she seemed to understand. My movements were deliberate. I let go of the steering wheel and reached into my pocket for my phone. My hands were perfectly steady. I didn't scroll through my contacts to call my son Leo or a friend for sympathy. I opened the internet browser. The search bar glowed in the darkness of the car. I typed 5 words, best real estate agent town. A list appeared. I didn't scrutinize it. I tapped the first link with a 5-star rating. A woman's face smiled back from the screen. Sarah Miller. Underneath her picture was a phone number and a promise we get it sold. I pressed the number. It rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. Sarah Miller speaking. My name is John Peterson, I said, my voice even and calm. I have a house I need to sell. Okay, Mr. Peterson. I can certainly help you with that. Can you give me the address? I told her the address, the place I had once called my daughter's home. A pause as she typed. All right, I see it. A lovely property. Are you thinking of listing soon? I'm thinking of listing tonight, I said. And I have one condition. What's that? I don't want the best price, I said, looking out at the dark, empty parking lot. I want the fastest sale. We met the next morning at a small, sterile coffee shop with white walls and minimalist furniture. It felt appropriate. There was nothing personal about this place, and I was about to sign away the most personal gift I had ever given. Sarah Miller was exactly as her website portrayed her: sharp, efficient, and radiating a confidence that bordered on predatory. She had a file folder already laid out on the table, the listing agreement sitting on top. Mr. Peterson, she said, shaking my hand firmly, thank you for coming in so promptly. I've done the preliminary market analysis on your property. It's in a desirable area, good schools, strong curb appeal. Given the current market, I'm confident we can list it for $900,000, maybe even $925, and have it sold within a month or two. I took a sip of the black coffee I'd ordered. It was bitter. I don't have a month or two, Ms. Miller. I told you on the phone. I want the fastest sale, not the highest price. She gave me a practiced, reassuring smile. Of course. But a quick sale often means leaving a significant amount of money on the table. My job is to get you the best possible return on your investment. This isn't an investment, I said, my voice flat, leaving no room for argument. It's a liability. I want it gone. Find me a cash buyer. Someone who can close immediately. Price it to move, not to linger. Her professional smile faltered for just a second. She saw something in my eyes, a hint of the story I would never tell her. She was smart enough not to ask questions. She simply nodded, adjusted her strategy, and pulled a pen from her briefcase. All right, she said, her tone shifting to pure business. If speed is the priority, I'll list it at a competitive $850. That will attract immediate attention from serious buyers. We'll specify a cash offer with a quick closing as preferred. I'll need you to sign here and here. I didn't read the fine print. I signed my name on the lines she indicated. The ink was black and final. The engine of my revenge was now running. The next few days were a blur of detached efficiency. Sarah arranged for a photographer. I imagine he took beautiful sunlit photos of the living room, where I'd been judged, the kitchen, where I'd cooked countless family meals, the backyard where I'd pushed Chloe on a swing set I built with my own hands. I didn't see the pictures. I didn't want to. Sarah told me Chloe and Mike had been cooperative, assuming I was merely exploring the market value. They were fools. Their greed had blinded them to the possibility that I would actually follow through. 2 days after I signed the papers, I saw it. I had parked my car across the street, hidden in the shade of an old oak tree. A young man from the real estate agency walked onto the front lawn with a mallet and a wooden post. With 3 solid thuds that I felt in my own chest, he hammered a sign into the soft green grass. For sale. I sat there for almost an hour just looking at it. There was no sense of triumph, no joy, just the heavy, hollow feeling of an amputation, a necessary act to save myself from a sickness I could no longer endure. The house looked different now. It was no longer a home filled with memories. It was just an asset waiting to be liquidated. The call came 4 days later. I was eating a sandwich in a cheap motel room that smelled of disinfectant. John, it's Sarah, she said, her voice crackling with excitement. You are not going to believe this. I'll believe a cash offer, I said. Better, an all-cash offer. No inspections, no contingencies. A young family, their financing is already secured. They saw the listing this morning and fell in love with it. They're offering $840,000, $840,000. The number hung in the air. A fortune. the sum total of a broken promise. And the best part, Sarah continued, they want to close in 5 days. They're ready to move immediately. 5 days. My breath caught for a second. It was happening. It was real. Are you sure you don't want to wait for other offers? Sarah asked, doing her due diligence. It's only been on the market for 72 hours. This is an incredible offer, but... There are no buts, I cut her off. Tell them they have a deal. Send me the paperwork. I'll sign it tonight. There was a brief, stunned silence on her end. Okay. Wow. Okay, John. I'll draw up the offer sheet right now. After the call, I sat on the edge of the stiff motel bed. I opened my laptop, and within the hour, the official offer was in my inbox. I read through the terms, my eyes scanning the legal jargon, until they landed on the final purchase price. I thought of the hope I had felt when I signed the original papers to buy that house. The dreams I had for my daughter's future. All of it now reduced to a number on a screen. With a steady hand, I moved the cursor and clicked the button to digitally sign the document. An email confirmation appeared instantly. It was done. The storm was coming for my daughter, and she didn't even see the clouds. Of course, this is the pivotal scene you requested. Here it is written to be the heart of the story, adhering to the specified length, style, and emotional depth. Scene 4, the call from the sun. The silence in the motel room was absolute. It was a vacuum, a space where the noise of my old life used to be. For 2 days since signing the papers, I had existed in that silence. I ate, I slept, I watched meaningless television shows. I was in limbo, a ghost, between 2 worlds, waiting for the life I had known to finally notice I was gone. Then on the 3rd day, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a name that brought the first real warmth to my chest in a week, Leo. My son, my good steady son. I knew this call was coming. I took a breath and answered. Hey son, Dad, hey, is everything okay? His voice was laced with a confusion I knew all too well. It was the voice he used when trying to navigate the chaos his sister created. I'm all right, Leo. Good to hear from you. Yeah, you too, but... Dad, what's going on? I just got off the phone with Chloe. She was hysterical. Screaming, crying, I could barely understand her. Something about a for sale sign on the lawn. She said you put the house up for sale. I told her that was crazy, that it must be some kind of mistake or maybe a prank to scare her straight. He laughed nervously. That's it, right? Just a bit of a scare. I closed my eyes. I pictured Leo in his own home, the one he and his wife had saved for the one they were raising my grandchildren in. He was a good man. He didn't deserve to be in the middle of this. But I couldn't lie to him. It's not a joke, son, I said, my voice quiet but clear. And it's not a scare. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint sound of his kids playing in the background. A life he had built himself. What are you talking about? He finally asked, the confusion hardening into disbelief. It's sold, Leo. Sold. The word was a choked whisper. What do you mean, sold? You can't just sell Chloe's house, that's her home. No, son. It wasn't, I said. And the weariness of 30 years was in my voice. It was my house. It was the house I bought with the last of my retirement savings. It was the house she lived in rent-free for 5 years. It stopped being her home the day she told me to pay her $2,000 a month, or get out. Another silence. This one was heavier. I had given him the facts, and now I could feel him trying to fit them into his perception of the world. She said that he asked, his voice strained. She actually told you to pay rent. Those were her exact words, Leo. The free ride is over, she said. So I ended it. Okay. Okay, Dad, that's awful. I can't believe she would say that. But you know how she gets. She's impulsive. She says things she doesn't mean. You can't just make a family homeless over a stupid argument. And there it was. The impulse to protect her. To smooth things over. It was the role he had been forced to play his whole life. It was the role I had played. And I just couldn't do it anymore. Son, this wasn't one argument, I said, and I felt a dam inside me begin to break, not with a flood of anger, but with a slow, steady leak of exhaustion. This was the last page of a very long book. Do you have any idea what it has been like, Leo? For years, I know she's been difficult. He started, but I cut him off. Difficult, Leo. Difficult is when a teenager argues about curfew. This is something else entirely. Remember that red convertible she just had to have for college? The one she swore she would pay for, I co-signed that loan. 6 months later, the bank was calling me because she hadn't made a single payment. She was spending her money on parties and spring break trips. I paid it off every last dime so my credit wouldn't be ruined. I remember the car, he said quietly. And do you remember her wedding? The one she wanted at the country club because her friend had gotten married there. She told me she had it covered. Then I found the credit card bills. Bills for cards she had opened in my name. For flowers for a designer dress she wore for 6 hours for a champagne fountain. I spent the next 2 years working overtime to pay that off. I never told you because I was too ashamed. Ashamed that my own daughter could be so reckless, so dishonest. I could hear his breathing on the other end of the phone, steady and slow. He was listening. Really listening. And what about Mike? I continued, the words spilling out now. Her wonderful husband. How many times have I given him seed money for another one of his brilliant business ideas that vanish into thin air, the gourmet food truck, the app for rating sunsets, $10,000 here, $5,000 there. It was never a loan, always a gift. Because if I said no, Chloe would call me crying, telling me I was crushing his dreams, that I didn't support them, that I was being selfish. I didn't know it was that much, Dad, Leo whispered. It was always that much, I said, my voice cracking slightly. It was always more. The down payment on that house, son. That wasn't just some spare cash I had lying around. That was my future. That was the money for my retirement, for my own small place, for traveling, for maybe finally taking a damn break. I gave it to her. I gave her my future because I wanted her to be secure. And in return, she tried to turn me into a tenant, a source of income. She looked at my love and saw a business opportunity. The line was silent for a full minute. I let him sit with it. I let him see the full picture, not just the small, frustrating snapshots he had witnessed over the years. When he finally spoke, the confusion and disbelief were gone from his voice. All that was left was a deep, sad understanding. She always made it sound so different, he said. She made it sound like you were happy to help, that it was no big deal. And I let her, I confessed, the shame returning. I enabled her. Every time I wrote a check, every time I paid a bill, I was teaching her that her actions had no consequences. I was so afraid of her tears, so afraid of her accusations, that I just kept giving. I thought I was being a loving father, but I wasn't. I was a crutch, and I was crippling her. I took a deep breath, the story finally told. You never asked for a thing, Leo. You worked 2 jobs in college. You and your wife saved for your own down payment. You built your own life brick by brick. You made me proud. Chloe, Chloe thought my life was hers to spend. The house was the last brick, and she threw it at my head. So I'm taking it back. But what's going to happen to them now? Leo asked the practical, responsible son. Where will they go? They will go to an apartment. I said, my voice firm again, the resolve returning. They will get jobs. They will learn the value of $1 because they will have to earn it. They will learn what it feels like to stand on their own 2 feet without a safety net woven from my life savings. It's the last lesson I can ever give her son, and it's the only one that has ever mattered. I understand, Dad, he said softly. I don't like it, but I understand. That's all I can ask, I said. I have to go now. We'll talk soon. And Leo, I love you. I'm so proud of the man you are. I love you too, Dad. I ended the call and tossed the phone onto the bed. A profound weight had been lifted. I wasn't just a vengeful old man. I was a father who had finally, after 30 long years, done the right and hardest thing. The sale closed on a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. I signed the last of the documents from my motel room, an act that felt as mundane as paying a utility bill. I wasn't there to see the fallout, but Sarah, my realtor, called me later. She described the scene with a tone of professional awe. Combined with what my son Leo told me later, I can picture it perfectly. I can see every moment of the beautiful, glorious chaos I had unleashed. It started with a moving truck. It rumbled down the quiet suburban street around noon, its air brakes hissing as it began backing into the driveway. A young couple, the new owners, got out of their car holding the hands of their 2 small children. They were smiling, pointing at the windows, imagining their new life in what they thought was their dream home. That's when the front door flew open. Chloe stormed out with Mike trailing helplessly behind her like a shadow. "Excuse me," Chloe's voice was sharp, dripping with the arrogance of someone who had never been told no. "Can I help you?" "This is private property." The new owner, a pleasant-looking woman named Mrs. Wilson, just looked confused. "I'm sorry, hi. We're the Wilsons. There must be some mistake. We're the new owners of this house." She held up a set of keys, the little metal teeth glinting in the afternoon sun. Chloe actually laughed. A short, ugly sound of disbelief. "I think you've been scammed. This is my house. I think you people need to leave right now before I call the police." Mr. Wilson, a tall, sturdy man, stepped forward. His expression was no longer friendly. "Ma'am, I don't know what's going on here, but we just closed on this property less than 2 hours ago. We have the deed. This is our house now. If anyone is going to call the police, it will be us." The certainty in his voice finally pierced Chloe's bubble of entitlement. A flicker of genuine panic flashed in her eyes. She looked at Mike, who just shrugged his face, pale with fear. Her own reality was crumbling right in front of her. And that's when her phone rang. She snatched it out of her pocket, her hands trembling. She saw my name on the screen. A wave of relief washed over her face, certain that I was calling to tell her the joke was over. "Dad," she shrieked into the phone. "Thank God. There are crazy people here. They're trying to move into our house there. They're saying they bought it. You have to do something. Call the lawyer, call the police, fix this." I let her finish. I waited for her frantic, panicked breathing to fill the silence. Then I spoke. My voice was calm, quiet, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Hello, Chloe. They are not crazy, and they are not lying." "What?" she whispered. "What are you talking about?" The sale was finalized at 10 a.m. "This morning, I said, as if discussing the weather. "They are the legal owners of that property. I believe their name is Wilson. You should introduce yourself." No, she whimpered, the fight draining out of her. No, no, Dad, you can't. This isn't funny. Stop it. This has nothing to do with being funny, I said. This is business. You taught me that. Now the Wilsons were kind enough to agree to give you 2 hours to collect your personal belongings before they change the locks. I suggest you stop wasting time on the phone with me and start packing. But this is my home, she finally screamed, a raw, desperate sound. No, Chloe, I said, and my voice was as cold as the ice that had formed around my heart. It was my house, that you made that very clear. Now it's theirs. Goodbye. I hung up the phone. I didn't wait for a reply. Outside, the movers lowered the truck's ramp. It hit the driveway with a loud final thud, the sound of her new reality crashing down. I didn't drive away after the phone call. I drove toward the house. I needed to see it through to the end. I parked across the street, sitting in the quiet of my car as I watched the chaos unfold. Chloe and Mike were in a frantic scramble, throwing clothes and random possessions into cardboard boxes on the front lawn. It was a pathetic sight. A lifetime of entitlement collapsing into a pile of junk on the curb. The new owners, the Wilsons, stood by their moving truck, keeping a respectful but firm distance, their faces a mixture of pity and impatience. After a few minutes, Chloe saw my car. Her face already streaked with tears of rage and self-pity contorted. She dropped a handful of clothes and stormed across the street, not even looking for traffic. She wrenched my passenger door open. "How could you?" she screamed, her voice raw. "How could you do this to your own daughter, to your family? We have nowhere to go. We're going to be homeless because of you." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't match her hysteria. I just looked at her, my expression calm and steady. The time for yelling was over. This was the time for the truth. "This isn't because of me, Chloe," I said quietly. "This is because of you. This is the bill for a lifetime of choices you've made. I'm just the one who finally delivered it." "Choices," she shrieked. "I didn't choose this. You did this to me." "I did exactly what you told me to do," I said, and my voice was as sharp and clean as breaking glass. "You stood in my living room in the house I bought for you, and you gave me a choice. Pay rent or get out. You thought you were holding all the cards, that you could squeeze the last drops of money and dignity from me. You saw me as an asset, a resource to be managed. You didn't see me as your father." I finally got out of the car, standing to face her on the quiet street. "You were right about one thing. The free ride is over. But you misunderstood who was getting the free ride. It wasn't me. It was you. A 5-year rent-free bill, free ride in a beautiful house paid for by the retirement I will now never have. All you had to do in return was show a little gratitude, a little respect. And you couldn't even manage that." She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. She was seeing me for the first time not as her father, the eternal provider, but as a man who had made a final, unbreakable decision. "You drew the line, Chloe, not me," I continued, my voice never rising. "You made this a business transaction. So let's finish it like one." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded check. I held it out to her. Her eyes, wide with confusion, darted down to the paper in my hand. "What's this?" she whispered. "It's $10,000, I said. "It is the very last dollar you will ever get from me. It's enough for you and Mike to get a small apartment to pay the first and last month's rent and to buy some groceries. After that, you are entirely on your own. You want to be treated like an adult. This is what it looks like. It's hard, and it's frightening, and nobody is going to bail you out." She just stared at the check, refusing to take it, as if touching it would make all of this real. "Take it," I said, my voice firm. Take it and start your new life, the one you have to pay for yourself." Her hand trembled as she finally reached out and took the check from my fingers. It looked so small and insignificant, this piece of paper, that was both a final insult and her only salvation. "You told me to get out, Chloe," I said, turning back toward my car. "And that's what I'm doing. I'm getting out of the drama, out of the disrespect. I am getting out of your life." The house was the last thing connecting us. You broke that connection. Goodbye. I got back in my car, closed the door, and started the engine. I didn't look in the rearview mirror as I pulled away. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what I would see: a grown woman standing in the middle of the street, holding a check for $10,000, surrounded by the wreckage of a life she thought she was entitled to. A few weeks later, I was sitting at a small cafe overlooking the ocean. The air was warm and smelled of salt and coffee. In front of me was not a newspaper filled with yesterday's problems, but a glossy travel brochure, its pages filled with pictures of snow-capped mountains and ancient faraway cities. For the first time in 30 years, I felt no weight on my shoulders. I didn't feel vengeful or triumphant. I just felt light. My phone buzzed on the table. It was Leo. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice warm and clear. "Just checking in." "How's the view?" "It's better than you can imagine, son," I said, smiling, as I watched a sailboat glide across the blue water. "Listen, I was just looking at this brochure for Alaska. They have one of those trains with the glass dome ceilings. What do you say we take the boys this summer, my treat?" I could hear the smile in his voice. "They would love that, Dad. We would all love that." "Good," I said, closing the brochure. "It's settled then." As I looked out at the endless horizon, I realized the number in my bank account wasn't what made me rich. It was this: the freedom, the peace, the ability to finally build a future for myself and to share it with the family that had never asked for anything but deserved everything. I learned that you cannot pour from an empty cup. For years, I gave until I had nothing left for myself. The hardest lesson was realizing that forcing my daughter to face the consequences wasn't my revenge. It was her final and perhaps only chance to finally grow up. What would you have done in this situation, and do you think I made the right choice? Share this story with others and subscribe for more tales about life's hardest lessons.